So let's start with the word Sheol. There's no evidence at all in the Old Testament for the idea of hell as a place of punishment. The Old Testament talks instead about Sheol, a hidden place where everyone, good or bad, goes when they die. Patriarch Jacob went there. The golden boy King David went there. God's prophet Jonah went there. It's true that Korah and his family went to Sheol, but only as a punishment in the sense of losing their life early. The idea of actually staying all in one piece and conscious forever in Sheol would have made no sense to the Old Testament writers. So David, for example, says in Psalm 18, "You won't leave my soul in Sheol, nor suffer your Holy One to see corruption." And again in Psalm 49, "Their forms will decay in Sheol." Isaiah said the spirits of the departed have to be woken up from their sleep to welcome the king of Babylon to Sheol. So Sheol's a hidden place of sleep, decay and corruption. The term Sheol occurs 64 times in the Old Testament, so the King James Version translates this 29 times as grave and 3 times as pit, but it translates the other 32 instances into the word hell, which carries the idea of active, conscious, unending pain. Perhaps the translators should have just used the word Sheol as it stood, given that it was considered a proper name of an actual place. 200 years before Jesus Christ came, the Old Testament was translated into Greek. So called the Septuagint, this is a version that Jesus was familiar with. Those translators didn't translate Sheol as hell or grave or pit, but as Hades, meaning literally not seen. Hades is a reasonable attempt at getting the Sheol idea across to Greek speakers. Greek mythology had Hades containing various zones. So there was, for example, the Elysian Fields, a good place for good people. Everybody wanted to go there. But then there was the Asphodel Meadows, a totally neutral place for those whose good pretty much balanced out their evil. And finally, there was Tartarus. Nobody wanted to go there. Really bad place for really bad people. Now, in Jesus' time, opinions about life after death were divided. The Sadducees considered physical death to be the final end. The Pharisees believed in Hades, but at least according to Josephus, their thinking seems to have assimilated some of the Greek ideas, with a good room and a bad room. Josephus notes, "They believe that souls have an immortal vigour, and that under the earth there will be rewards and punishments, according as they have lived virtuously or viciously in this life." Now, Jesus' parable of Lazarus and the rich man seem to confirm the traditional view of heaven and hell. There's the burning discomforts of the wicked guy, and the happiness and security of the good guy, and the great gulf in between. But Jesus is not trying to clarify the geography of the afterlife, but to refute the complacent beliefs of the Pharisees. Because by cherry-picking bits of their Septuagint Old Testament, they assumed that their riches and position in this life indicated God's special blessing, hence ultimately the best seats in heaven too. And beggars and other lowlife would continue their downward spiral into the Hades drop zone. But Jesus' point in this parable is just to contradict that. Now, this rich man in Hades is in a parable, and we can't chop up Jesus' parables and then sort the bits into metaphor versus reality. If we treat Jesus' parables the same way as we treat Paul's letters, we just get into contradiction and confusion and arguments. But despite this, the King James Version translates Hades as hell in 10 out of the 11 occurrences. And while many of us no longer read the King James Version, our theology has undoubtedly been shaped by it. We mentioned Tartarus earlier. In Greek mythology, this was a dark and airless place for punishing gods who'd been really bad. There was a whole bunch of really bad guys there. There's just one reference to Tartarus in the Bible, in Peter's second letter. He doesn't mention Cyclops, the one-eyed, muscle-bound thug. And he doesn't refer to the dragon-headed, scorpion-tailed woman called Campy. Peter simply writes, "God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to Tartarus, putting them into gloomy dungeons." That doesn't mean he believed in Cyclops or Campy, nor Typhon, the giant multi-headed, dragon-fingered, viper-bodied monster. He wasn't promoting the Greek afterlife mythology any more than Jesus' references to Hades were confirming the existence of the river Styx. Peter is actually referring to a story in the ancient book of Enoch that his readers are already familiar with. And he uses this as one illustration among several to show that God knows everything he needs to know in order to judge, to rescue, and to punish. Now consider the punishments mentioned in 2 Peter 2. They are the great flood in Noah's time and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And these, though catastrophic, were both events in this life which terminated the physical lives of the wicked. Neither, of course, were ongoing conscious torment forever. But despite this, the word Tartarus still gets translated as hell in our Bible. So far, the grey oblivion of Sheol, and the hidden place of Hades holding good and bad, and the reference to mythological Tartarus were all translated as hell. And interestingly, the original meaning of the word hell is actually hidden. Thus, coming from the same root, something which hides your head is called a helmet, and that hidden part of your foot is called the heel. A mound which is hidden or covered by trees is called a holt, and a covered building, one which hides its occupants, was called a hall. So how did this hidden waiting room of departed spirits end up as an inescapable agonizing death camp?